Well, welcome back to another episode of Turning the Table, sponsored by Benchmark 60. Turning the Table is the most progressive weekly video cast for today's food and beverage industry, featuring staff-centric operating solutions for restaurants in the hashtag new hospitality culture. My name is Adam Lamb, and I'm a career coach for chefs and hospitality professionals. You can find me at cheflifecoaching.com, and we have our Turning the Table fantastic Turning the Table is the most progressive co-host Jim Taylor of Benchmark 60. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Adam. How are you?
Great. I'm really excited to get into this conversation today. Number one, because I think Scot Turner is just an amazing individual and doing some really great stuff on the other side of the pond. And I am just forever bewildered at the quality of talent that that you somehow always manage to bring people together, man. It's really great. So,
oh, thanks. Yeah.
Like
to be connected to good people, you know?
Exactly. So this is episode 121, the 5 things I wish I knew before going into the hospitality industry. Or you could also say 5 lessons learned from a life in the hospitality industry.
Yeah. I think I was thinking about this before we started the show today. It was actually hard to limit it to 5. I was scratching things out going, no, this one's more exciting, or this one's more valuable for me. So I think there's going to be some good ones here.
Yeah. And in just a few moments, we'll be bringing out our featured guest, Scot Turner of Auden Hospitality. They're based in the UK, and they help entrepreneurs and operators grow businesses that disrupt the hospitality sector. There's that disruption again, dude. Yeah. Stick around because each of us have 5 takeaways that we've, I would say, earned in our life in the industry. And you're going to want to stick around because in all probability, you're going to be able to pick these up and run with them and make change in your operation almost immediately. So this lunchbox, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the most interesting part of the process of going through trying to figure out my top 5, there was actually some realization there of, wait a second, I hadn't thought about it that way before or whatever. So there might be some, there's going to be some good takeaways, I think, for people.
Yeah, I totally get that. This Lunchbox live stream is broadcast every week on Thursday at 12 noon Eastern time on the Turning the Table podcast page on LinkedIn, YouTube, and the Chef Life Coach page on Facebook. You can catch the audio-only podcast everywhere you get your podcasts in about 2 days. We ask that you share the show with someone you care about or who can find this information useful, and please leave a review. It really does help for others to find us. And Jim, I'm kind of still blown away by how many people are like excited for this show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's getting some traction out there.
It is. And hopefully it's because we're not trying to force a message down, on people. Let's just talk about what's going on, right?
Correct.
Maybe a bit of a different way of looking at things. And we're not trying to, take over the world doing this. We just want to help a few people here and there. So
yes, because we still believe in the hospitality industry at its core, right?
Yeah.
All right. Links to the videos and other things discussed in the show can be found in the comments of this particular episode and in the audio version of the show notes. So without further ado, I want to bring in our guest, Scot Turner. Hey, Scot.
Hey, Adam.
Scott.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
All right.
How are you, buddy?
Really good. Yeah, really good. Thank you. Really good. And I'm a bit like Jim. I really struggled to get 5. So there's been people watching me on the tube and the underground all week, like cursing and crossing things out in books and things as I've been doing it. So I'm looking forward to this one. It should be good.
Thank you very much for that. And again, kind of a kindred spirit, because, like me, you've also had the Kool-Aid. Now, in the past couple shows, we've been trying to model different ways in which chefs, managers, owners of hospitality restaurants can use a very, very simple process to actually gauge what's happening in the room, meaning that there's a couple other organizations that do a little bit differently. But I was on a chow meeting this past Monday, and I was just kind of blown away by it. So if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and share this to everybody. And so this is how are you really, And I was really blown away at the level of vulnerability and transparency that these people showed. And a couple days later, I was able to actually pay it forward because I was in a Facebook group and saw a guy who I could tell by the way he was languaging his post was riding the fence, who's kind of dancing along the razor blade's edge of, I'm pretty fucked up and I need to get some help. And he just put it out there, and I think maybe there were 2 comments. And so I DM'd him and told him about Chow, which is based in Denver. And they're actually looking to bring this program nationwide. But basically, it's about building a community of people in a safe space where they can actually talk about what's going on with them. And I was, honored to be a guest on their show, or a guest on one of the conversations. But I'm going back every Monday, man. I mean, it's a great conversation. And to think that this person's a little bit north of Denver, and they actually have one of these meetings live where he is, just belies the fact that, there's resources out there that a lot of us don't know. So, Scott, how are you, really?
I'm medium rare today. I'm medium rare. I was very sensible last night on a night out. So that's helped with the grumpiness. And yeah, things are good. It's been a good day today. So I'm sitting around there.
Campfire.
How about you?
So I would say that if you talked to me 3 weeks ago, or even probably 7 days ago, I would say I was completely burnt, both physically and emotionally. And that really was kind of a depressive state to be in because, physically, when I can't get going, it really fucks with my mind, I guess. So over the past 3 or 4 days, my wife and I have been working on a couple of different processes that have been able to kind of free up some of this energy that's stuck in my body. So right now, I would say I'm medium rare to rare, and I'm as surprised at that as anybody because, again, 3-4 days ago, you were away for a holiday, and I managed to still hunt you down and for a couple conversations, and I'm pretty sure that you got that things weren't really great for me.
Call me anytime you want, man.
And it's really important to understand that small steps over time actually yield huge results. And so to be able to stand here and go, yeah, I feel pretty good, man. I'm surprised. So
good.
Yeah. How about you, pal?
I honestly, I'm rare today. I'm good. So interesting that you brought this concept up for our conversation today. And, Scott, for you and for anybody else, I didn't know this was coming. We've done this before on the show, which I think is really kind of cool. But I didn't know. So this is an Adam Lamb curveball, but I think it's good, and it's amazing to me how relevant it is. So my wife and I decided to do a 30-day gratitude challenge.
Get out of town, really?
Where every night before we go to bed, we tell each other 5 things we're grateful for that day. And at first I was like, are we really going to do this? And this is going to be it's actually more difficult than you think.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to say the same thing I said yesterday. Grateful for my daughter, grateful for our home, but you go through that process. It's really interesting. And then the other thing is that it's funny timing. Someone sent me this thing yesterday. It's one of those sort of blocks of just a bunch of random letters, right? And it says, whatever the first 3 words are that you see are going to happen in 2023.
Correct.
Right? Okay, and it's just kind of one of these things.
Hokey.
The first word that I saw was gratitude. The second word that I saw was miracle, which we had a daughter 4 months ago. And the third that I saw was growth. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Like this is, and now you bring up the medium rare and rare things, Scott or Adam. So it's somewhere. But
well, so and so here's the thing. There is scientific proof that if you're in an attitude of gratitude for longer than being depressed, it starts shifting things that you're not even aware of, and everyday miracles start showing up, whether that's a free cup of coffee or a parking space or whatever. Yep. And as addendum to your thing, Jim, Jennifer and I do this. We call it the appreciation game. So the whole idea is that you need to appreciate 3 things about the other person. They must be timely and specific, and the other person can't say anything while they're receiving that.
Yeah.
And so it can't be like, oh, I really appreciate you because you're sweet or anything. No, honey, I really love the fact that even though I was in a bad mood today, that you decided that love was going to win and you weren't going to be pulled in on my shit. Like talking about the real stuff. And it's absolutely transformative in a relationship. But what I found for myself is like, yeah, I don't like to be appreciated.
Yeah.
Like it's awkward. It's awkward to sit there and because the receiver can't say anything. And that's the biggest challenge. So Scott, I think we went sideways a little bit, but that's okay. Because it's important for people. It's important for people who listen to this to have an actual idea of what that looks like, to be concerned about someone else's well-being. And the reason it's so prevalent for me right now is, we're a couple days away from, holiday hell week. Once Christmas and New Year's, forget it, man. You're hanging on for dear life. And I don't want to make the assumption that just because it's busy, there aren't people who are in pain and need some resources.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, sure.
Well, and our topic today of 5 things, that were 5 takeaways or learnings or, things where, there's some gratitude around from our careers in hospitality. I mean, that's kind of when I was going through that, I was like, oh, this is interesting, right? So I think we're going to have some good discussion. I'm looking forward to hearing, because we're in 3 different countries, right?
Right.
I'm in Canada, Auden here in the US, and Scott, you're in the UK. I mean, I'm actually curious, what kind of similarities are there?
Yeah.
Are they the same? Are they different? Because, I mean, currency is different. Language might be different in some places, but I mean, hospitality is hospitality, right? So
couldn't agree more.
I'm curious to see what the differences are, but I think there's going to be some similarities too.
So
it's funny. Sorry, it's funny you say that, because I did a post. I don't know if you. I think it was yesterday, where I did literally a caption: "I love hospitality because," and I would encourage anyone to go through the comments, because they're all pretty much the same, and they're all talking about people. And that's what makes this industry great, right? Is even though there's people who are burnt out, people going through troubles, people going through struggles, all the rest, we know how challenging this industry can be. It always comes back to, I think it was make people smile, and people was the generic thing. So I mean, it's just there's probably very few other industries that would get that type of response. So
yeah, 100%.
Totally. So Scott, we've had you on the show once before. Had great comments, great feedback, and it just seems like, and I'm not attributing it to the show, but it feels like there's been, like, Auden Hospitality is up in its game, is what I can see, because you're all over the place. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I wanted to kind of crow about a little bit is because you are constantly creating, which is very, very cool. And you just launched your first course, right?
Yep.
Write the perfect business plan. Look at that. That is groovy. And want to make
it's not bad for a guy who failed maths 3 times at school, right? it's not the best advertisement, but no, it was. Do you know? And I've spent a lot of time with Jim talking about this. Is when I set up Auden Hospitality, it was about helping owners and operators grow their businesses. And as I was talking to a lot of owners and founders, I was sitting there, and money's tight. A lot of them don't have skill, knowledge, expertise, time, resource to do it, and some of them just simply don't have the templates. And it got me thinking back to when I was a junior manager. A lot of the time, I wouldn't want to admit I didn't know how to do something, so I would scour the internet for help, and I'd never get the right help. So I thought, let's stick true to the vision of Auden Hospitality, and let's give people some real tangible templates, resource, and that kind of went through to doing the online course as well, in terms of how to create the perfect pitch, how to do the business plan properly where investors are going to love it. So let's think about what they're going to ask. Or, a lot of the time people have just kind of done back of a fag packet, and they kind of know what's going on, but they don't, it's not there properly. So, again, it's about showing people and giving them the knowledge and expertise to be able to put something together. And I'm really excited to share that knowledge. And I'm already working on templates with like quick 5-minute tutorials that they can then take and implement into their business. So things like daily revenue reports, things like food flashes, what else? Mini P&Ls, all those type of things that in an independent business, or when you're a founder, you either don't know how to do it, or you don't have the people who can tell you how to do it properly. And to download this document and watch me tell you how to do it for 5 minutes could transform the way your business operates. So that was very much about what it is. And listen, someone said to me the other day, "Why are you doing it for so cheap? You're a consultant. you should be charging big cash." And I said to them, but there's people out there who won't pay 4 or 5 figure sums to get a business plan written for them. So why should we take that resource away from them? Let them do it. And if they struggle as they're doing it, they can book a one-to-one consultation, or they can give up and we can take it on and we can do all those things. But I really want to give people the opportunity to do things well. And, if there's some junior people on the ladder up the chain who download it just for knowledge, just to be ahead of the game, then we've made a difference to the industry. So yeah, a few different reasons for doing it, but I'm really, really excited. It's I think it's going to be a great course for people to get.
I'm continually fascinated by how helpful something like that could be. Jim, you've also got a course in Benchmark 60 that for a while you were just kind of giving it away. And that had so much actionable intelligence in it. I was, again, kind of like blown away at your specific brilliance, Scott's brilliance. Each of us have this particular slice of the pie that we do really, really, really well. So when we get outside of our lane, that things get screwed up. So I don't want to belabor that point. But Scott, for those who may not have seen that last episode, can you kind of give us a brief chat about Scot Turner, Auden Hospitalities, or Hospitality, and what its mission is, and what are you doing to actually make that mission real in the world?
Yeah, sure. So I've worked in hospitality over 20 years, started out in 5-star hotels, worked in 5-star hotels for about 15 years, got to the position of hotel manager, realized that I didn't want to go any further and be a hotel GM and kind of beyond that, because my passion was F&B. And I could have gone and worked in different hotels, but it's same thing, different four walls. So I left and went to independent restaurants, went to work in Dubai. So lived in Dubai for 5 years, worked across Dubai, Saudi Arabia. I think it was 12 countries when I totted up for this. It's one of my points until later. So did that. And then at the start of 2020, moved back to London, operated here throughout COVID, got to the position of COO within a quite a large investment company that had restaurants in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, London, and New York. And at the start of this year, I decided to kind of go out on my own, start up Auden Hospitality, and we do two things. So we want to grow brands, and we want to work with young brands. So we help founders, entrepreneurs grow their brands, and that could be a number of different ways. We can help them do the initial strategy of how they should grow. We look at, what investment models should they look at? Do they franchise? Do they get investment? Do they bootstrap? Do they license? How do we increase personal brands for chefs so that they can increase their revenue earning? And we help them do all of that, and then we help them execute. And we're working with a number of different brands right now that we like to think are going to disrupt the industry by being a little bit different. So Alpaca Coffee is a great example. Here in the UK, they've just won Best Sustainable Coffee Brand by BBC Good Food, which is a big accolade here. They were a Virgin startup brand. So really cool brand there. We're working with Adam Simmons, Michelin star chef. We've kind of worked with him on his personal branding. And there's another couple of brands which we're going to release in the new year, which are really, really cool brands as well. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is I use my hotel experience and my hotel background to go into some of these spaces that are very beige, very ordinary, very safe, and elevate them. And that's where the disrupting comes in. And in an ideal world, we'll take our brands from our brand community and put them into those spaces, and we create this nice little ecosystem. But I truly believe that some of these hotels have to start looking at F&B properly and treat it like a revenue center and not a service function to rooms. And we're working with hotel groups at the minute to do that. We've worked with them on how to help with the processes and systems. One of the big ones we're working with at the minute is the Social Hub, which is 19 hotels out of Amsterdam. Brilliant chain. brilliant group, forward thinking, really doing things different. So that's what we're doing. And I put disrupt into the tagline just because one, who doesn't like to disrupt, right? And
Right.
we don't want to play safe. We want to push boundaries. We want to influence generations to come. We want to challenge the expected, and we want people to walk into venues that we're involved with and kind of go, wow, let the shoulders go back and go, this is a bit different. This is cool. And that's what we want to do. So, but my passion is really about brands, helping founders, helping, young operators grow and develop through.
Couldn't be a better time for you to show up on the scene, man. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun to kind of watch that kind of evolution over the last few months. So I mean, since we've been connected too, it's exciting things coming for Auden in 2023 and going too.
So, this show is all about solutions, or at least not bitching about the problems too much. Like, we'd love to be able to come to the discussion with a solution already. So, and we like to make it brief so that people can consume this in their car on the way to work or on their break. So I don't want to rush anybody, but so Scott, what would you say been like your top two, number one and number two, things that you've either learned or you wish you knew before you went into the industry?
He throws some curveballs, right? Because it was 5 and now we're going to 2.
Okay, no. Here's the point. I just want to do a whip round with the first 2, and then we'll popcorn the rest. So it's not like we're bailing on the other 3.
Okay, I'll give you 2 that I think people can learn from the most. Number 1, and I'll make a statement and we can talk about it. Not everyone needs a mentor, but you do need people who influence you. So I don't believe that everyone sometimes I hear people going, I need a mentor. I need a mentor. I don't agree with that. But you do need to find people who can influence your career and influence your progress. And that can be good and it can be bad.
Right.
They don't have to be great managers. It can be the worst ones. And I've learned more of some of the worst ones than some of the great ones. So, I really urge people, especially who are kind of lower in the journey than potentially we are, don't get hung up on mentors, because if there is one of those people around, they'll find you. But make sure you surround yourself with people who can influence. And it was interesting. I saw a post from the CFO of Gymshark on LinkedIn the other day, and he quoted a quote from a cricketer called Simon Hughes, and he said, "I haven't set the world alight, but I've hung around with people who have." So and I think that's super important. The other one for me in terms of number 2 is people should travel. People should see different cultures. I'm one of those people who's lived abroad. I would encourage anyone who can to work abroad. I probably went 5 years too late, but it was such an experience to go and work in a different culture where you aren't around family and friends. You're all of a sudden on your own. You have to do everything. You learn things about yourself that you definitely don't. And I've lived away from home in different cities since 18. So, I've not gone from living with mum and dad to moving to Dubai, but I learned things about myself there that I didn't know before, in terms of resilience, in terms of adapting to situations. And when you work in different cultures, you start managing very different. You start going into new situations very different, because you learn how to understand the landscape before you start acting. And that's super important as you're going through your career to not dive in with 2 feet too quick. We opened a hotel in Montenegro, and in Montenegro they work 40 hours a week. Doesn't matter what level you are, GM of a hotel, F&B manager, waiter, 40 hours a week. We opened this hotel, and I think we opened on the Friday, and at 4:00 on the Friday, the F&B manager came to me and said, "I hope you have a good weekend." I said, "What do you mean? I hope I have a good weekend?" I said, I've done my 40 hours. I'm going. I said, "But we opened the hotel at 12:00 this afternoon. It's the first weekend." "Oh, well, you should have thought about that. I've done my 40 hours. I was like, "Yeah, brilliant. No problem. I can do it." No worries. But it teaches you valuable things about understanding culture, understanding how people work, understanding what drives people. And I don't think I would have got that without working in different cultures.
Yeah, I don't think Jim and I could find any argument in any of that.
No.
Right, Jim?
No, not at all. I mean, I didn't get to travel the way that you have, but I traveled around all of the country. That I mean, in smaller doses probably than moving to Dubai, but I can relate completely.
Yeah.
Adam, what are your first two?
My first two. And if I seem to be a bit distracted, it's just because I'm writing all this down because I want to make sure at the very end we have this really nice tight. Here's your five. Here's my five. So if I was to go back and bump into myself in my very, very, very first executive chef job, I would have told him that there is plenty of time. Like, you don't have to go at it whole hog, man. You like, this is a long game that we're playing here. And for probably the first third of my career, I was, just kicking ass and taking names and leaving, stepping over cold bodies until I couldn't do that anymore because my staff said, we're leaving. So I think my grand desire to achieve a certain level of stature or notoriety or revenue caused me to act in a very, very dishonorable way. So I would definitely tell myself, you got plenty of time, bro. You're going to just take this one step at a time. And Scott, to your point, so there's a restaurant in Fort Lauderdale called Cafe Max, Maxx. Oliver Saucy's the chef there. His dad was a CIA instructor, and I knew Oliver personally. And the very first time I walked in that restaurant, I was angry as hell because the restaurant that I'd always dreamed in my head that would be mine was there. Like, God damn it. And we ended up becoming good friends. And I wanted to go work for him regardless of how much I was going to get paid. I mean, yeah, I had a house, I had car payments, all that stuff. But if I could have, I would have gone to work with him. Like, look for the experience and the wisdom that comes from that experience, and continue to put yourself in a situation where you are both emotionally and intellectually challenged. Yeah,
for sure.
And by the way, my ex-wife went into that restaurant just last week, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you remember? Like, I was married to Adam Lamb. Adam Lamb, what? Where is he? He's a legend." I'm like, "What?" Like, that would not be the way I would describe myself. Just saying.
I'd describe you that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
Jim, how about your top two?
Well, so I've got five, but I don't know if they're in no particular order. I don't think. I mean, the first one, I think I've always been, I felt like I was always a fairly outgoing person growing up, but that was multiplied when I got into restaurants. I think the first one, and this definitely helped me when I was in my career in hospitality and operations and dealing with staff and customers and working through things. But I mean, times 10 now in what I do now is that it just made me realize how passionate I am about helping people, serving people, helping people, supporting people, whatever it is. Right. And, I think to Scott's point about trying to deliver some sort of digital product that people can use, trying to deliver, something like this podcast where we're just doing this because we care and we believe in moving the industry forward. I just am, very passionate about helping people. And a lot of that, I think, came from my time in hospitality. And the other one is just, I think I could word this a few different ways. I could word it as problem solving skills. I could word it as hustle. I could word it as, being good in logistics or trying to work through problems, whatever situations, whatever it might be. But I think, we've all been in that scenario in the heat of the moment on a Friday dinner service when we're short 3 people and, a group of 20 walks in the front door or something like that. And it's just like, okay, we got to figure out how to make this work and deliver a killer experience. And I mean, my friends and my family and my wife, they all make fun of me about it. It's good, it's both fun, right? Well, something will come up and just, ask Jim what he thinks we should do. He'll have 15 ideas, good or bad, right?
Right.
But I think that's kind of just how I approach my life and my business and my everything now is just, we'll figure it out. We'll work through it. And I think that comes from time in hospitality.
And Scott, your second point about resilience and then being able to adapt really hit me because words are tricky, and when you talk about resilience, that could mean that you're just really good at standing in the shit all day long, right? Being an emotional doormat. However, the ability to adapt, that skill, that muscle that has to be built, like not taking things personally, like just falling back, doing that kind of stuff, I think is incredibly important. And Jim, let me just be clear. So do you think the hospitality industry brought that out of you that was already there naturally, or was that a skill that you had to build?
The problem solving skills.
Yeah, the problem solving skills, adapting.
I think it was always there, maybe a little bit, just through playing sports and stuff like that growing up. But it definitely, you put someone that's 20 years old in a scenario where they're under pressure and there's stress and there's an expectation from a customer and they want to make some tips as they're doing it. They're trying to make whatever it might be. I mean, it definitely sharpens those skills. I got to figure out how to do this quickly in a way that works. So, I mean, that went from being a waiter when I was 19 years old or 18 years old, or being a busboy when I was 15 years old, to being an executive when I was 35 years old, trying to figure out how to open a new 400-seat restaurant. I mean, it was all sort of the same type of thing, right?
Totally got it. Do you want to just continue with your last three, since you're on such a roll?
Well, and Scott already touched on this one, so it's kind of cool that there's some similarity. But I definitely learned what type of leader I didn't want to be. We touched on that a little bit. Learned lots about what I did want to be, but I think I definitely had some experiences with leaders that I didn't want to be. Hopefully, people don't say that who work with me. I mean, one is just the first one that I wrote down is just working in hospitality made me comfortable speaking to anybody about pretty much anything. I mean, just put me in a situation and I'll talk to people. The other one that actually came up that I didn't think of right away was just how to read a room or a body language cue or a social cue. And it started with things like, why is that person in the dining room wearing their coat? Well, I'm not around, so I'm not cold, but the room is.
Yeah, what am I missing here, right?
That type of stuff, right? What is someone's looking around the room? They wonder where the washroom is. Or the restroom, whatever country you call it, right? But those types of learning social cues.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? I always used to judge a restaurant manager on a few things, but one of them was how they could manage atmospherics, because it was exactly that. Is a good maitre d' could read the room, could understand if the music was too loud, too low, the temperature wasn't right, the lights were too bright, too low, and it makes a huge difference to an experience. So it is a huge skill.
Yeah. So I mean, I could go on for a while about the things the lessons, but that kind of tops me off. So
can you summarize it for me? Like wrap it in a nice little bundle for Christmas? Here you go.
Yeah. Okay. Number one, I'm comfortable speaking to anybody based on experience in hospitality.
Okay.
Number two is problem solving skills. Number three is how to read body language, social cues, a room, that type of thing. Number four is the type of leader that I want to be or don't want to be. And number five would be just a growing and continually evolving passion for helping people.
Perfect. Scott, before we get into your last three, you brought up a very interesting phrase, atmospherics. Like, in your mind, what does that actually apply to?
For me, that applies to, so if you have a restaurant room and the scene is set and the light is the perfect level for the time of day, the music is the right level for the amount of people in there, for the setting that's there, the temperature is just right, the team are well positioned, and they're serving people properly, people are polishing cutlery and by a service station that's next to a table and things. It's that whole piece that makes up the restaurant before the server goes to the table and the food hits the table. And it's funny, I was speaking to someone today and we were talking about music in the hospitality industry, and he came up with a great thing of saying, when you're walking down the street and you don't have a reservation, the first thing you'll do is you'll look and you'll go, it's quite busy inside, and then you'll go inside and the atmosphere will dictate what you think the restaurant is going to be like without knowing the food, the service, and etc. So I think it's that whole atmospherics, and that doesn't come naturally. It's got to be taught, it's got to be trained, and then I always thought that people just had a natural knack for knowing when a room was right and when it wasn't. So it's yeah, it's like, you know, when people used to put in fancy lighting systems into the restaurants.
Mhm.
And I used to sit in design meetings just going, give me a dimmer. Give me a dimmer any day of the week over these electric things or these scene sets that tells you
Right.
at 4 o'clock it goes to 60%, because there's nothing like a good old-fashioned dimmer to be able to adjust the setting as the customer needs it. And it's those bits that you don't just pick up. You don't just pick up naturally. You need to have people. Back to my point around people who can influence. You know, that isn't a mentor. That's someone who influences you, but it would make you a substantially better leader in this field by understanding that. And I worked for an amazing person. She was my GM for the Dorchester collection, and her attention to detail about the small things, you know, fire. We had real wood fires in the lobby, and you know, it was one of the things she used to go crazy about. Was as someone topped up the fire, is the fire burning right? Yeah, is the fire burning right? I mean, when I first got there, I was just like, oh my god, what does she? She's crazy. What do you mean? Is the fire burning right? There's a flame. It's fine. She wanted like racing, because it was in a stately home. She wanted the pictures, and so it's those little bits, and that's one of my points actually, is attention to detail. If you can develop an attention for detail, no matter where you are, whether it's, and please no one get offended with this, but whether it's Pizza Hut, whether it's the Alan de Cass, whether it's the Dorchester collection, you know, the coffee shop down the road, if you have attention to detail, if you walk in the store in the morning and look for everything that's wrong and make it right, if you print the menus and every day they're crisp, if you produce an online course and everything looks right, the graphics look right, if you, whatever you might do, before I do anything, I always look at it again, and I always make sure that there's the attention to detail is just right, because it makes a huge difference to people's experience. And again, people cut corners. People are in a rush. But guests get that. Guests understand that things don't always go right, that things are busy. It's how you rescue that situation by being hospitable and being personable. Those little attention to details can buy you an extra 20% on the tolerance levels, because they'll accept a mistake if everything else looks right. You know, it's toilets not being cleaned through the day and stuff like that. Like, guests see 2 or 3 of these things building up, and they understand it's not just that there's a mistake; it's a pattern. So I think attention to detail is, for me, is number one in terms of what you should keep close.
So of the 5, you would put that as number 1?
I'd put it very close to number 1, yeah,
okay.
For sure.
And what would be your
my other 2?
Yes, please.
So don't underestimate your power as a leader. So whatever position you're in, whether it's supervisor, head waiter, CEO, or operations, there's always someone below you who looks up to you. So never underestimate, wherever you are on the ladder, what your impact as a leader can be. And sometimes you don't realize, because I certainly didn't at times, because being humble, whatever you might call it, just maybe not appreciating where I was or what position I'd got to. But sometimes I took that for granted, and I think it's super important to know that. And you'd never want to be one of those people that they said, you know, bad guy, lent loads from him because he was terrible. You know, and back to that influence, you know, you can influence people. Yeah, just don't take it for granted, because you're in a really privileged position where you can inspire people, you can develop people, you can there's people who work for me. I always talk about it. There's a guy who worked for me. He was doing chemistry. His mother hates me because he was doing a chemistry degree. He was the most intelligent person I've ever worked with in hospitality. He now runs a hotel in the north of England. And I don't think his mother's spoken to me since. This was like 18 years ago, because she thought he was going to be a chemist, and he runs a restaurant very successfully. But yeah, you know, you just don't know what impact you can have on people by treating people well. So that's I think that's my 4th. My 5th is, and this is one I've learned probably most recently, is self-care is really important. And I think the hardest worker isn't always the best worker. definitely not always the smartest. And I think, if you don't deal with pressure at some point, if you're under pressure, it's going to peak, and you'll ruin a legacy if it gets to that point. And I think you have to, especially with everything that people are talking about now, and it becoming a lot easier in the industry probably than when we were all kind of growing up through the ranks. I think that self-care piece is really important. That's not saying don't work hard. That's not saying don't work the hours if that's what you want to do. But you always have to have time for you. And that's one thing that's been really important to me over the last 12 months that I've learned the most.
Yeah. Way to hit the hammer on the head, Jim.
Adam, I'm curious to hear what your last couple are too. I mean, Scott, that self-care one, it's interesting that that's something you learned in the last 12 months after you got into becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
and work even harder.
Yeah, but I work very different now. So I work very different, and I probably have a lot more. I have less guilt. So if I stop and have dinner with the family, or I have lunch with my wife, or I have less guilt because I can pick it up. And there's no one to tell me it's not right, or nothing to feel guilty about. Whereas before, in a corporate life, I would have probably assumed sometimes, and it felt guilty. And then I was a killer sometimes, especially when I was traveling, for just being really selfish, because the adrenaline of jumping on planes every week and traveling, and the whole rush of being in airports and going to see different places and things. And I was probably really selfish, and I got to a point where my wife was at home with the kids, and I might not see them for a few days, and I probably wouldn't think about what that was doing to them. And I think I told you, Jim, as well, when I had my first kid in Dubai, my wife sat me down after about 3 months and said, you do know you're going to miss things if you don't find a way to get a structure around what you do. Because I was just going out as normal, 8 o'clock in the morning. I was out, I was back late, I was making promises I'd be home, and I wasn't being home. And from that day, I always said I won't go to work before 10 a.m. And I get up, I spend time with the kids, I take them to school, I spend time with them. And then if I can't get back on a night, at least they've seen Dad. And I think it's those little bits that you don't get taught, but you've got to find a way, because you definitely feel more fulfilled because of it.
Absolutely.
Scott, just to let you know, that's where a mentor comes in. Sorry, I couldn't. Right, because
so Adam, I gotta not to cut you off there, but I mean, Scott and I have been kind of going on here about some stuff that I know that you have experience in, whether it's travel, whether it's family, whether it's working, a million hours a week. So, I mean, I'm just curious where some of this lands for you.
So a couple things that, as I was kind of losing myself in the conversation, meaning not trying to run it, not trying to, own the narrative, just kind of being part of it. I got taken away to this place where all of a sudden I got those last three, bing, 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 bing. And the first one was, stop trying to be clever. So, I'm an author, I write, I sing. For me, there's a the only time I would ever try to be clever is when I was trying to impress somebody, right? Either with my words or my way of being, whether that was culinarily or from a leadership standpoint. I can tell you, going on more than one, not a stage, but a job interview where I had to cook out, and at the last minute, I'm trying to make shit clever and completely fucking bomb.
Right.
So for me, getting back into the space of vulnerability, transparency, and directness made the complete difference in my career. When I was able to say to somebody, listen, we're going to have a conversation. It's not going to be pleasant, but we're going to get through it together, and then actually go through that, and not just relegate them to the shit pile of oh, he's a lost cause or she's a lost cause. So stop trying to be clever. Scott, to your point about atmospherics and orchestration, right? There's so much for us to focus on. I got to tell you, one of the most successful restaurateurs I ever worked with, I couldn't stand him because about 9 o'clock, he was running around the restaurant, adjusting the volume of the music, adjusting the... He was like... And yet, the place was slammed all the time. Like, that's something that I don't think I appreciated until now, this very moment in this conversation. But for me, trying to bring it down to its simplest, its most, binary equation, the hospitality industry is about relationships. That's the only thing that matters. And so the better that you become, and I'm saying it to me, the better I become at communicating, first and foremost, and engaging in a relationship in a positive, empowering way. You don't ever have to worry about anything else, man. It's done. Right? Because we're focused on the detail as opposed to the person who's like just burned his hand in the fryer or something like that.
Yeah.
And the last word operationally for me is love. Like, we have got to get over this PC bullshit about the fact that we can't actually talk to somebody or else they're going to go run into HR. Now, I'm not saying verbally abuse them, but there is a level of care and being when you're with somebody, when you see their heart and they see your heart, game over, man. You're there for life, because not only do you want to continue to nourish that relationship and grow it, but as a way of modeling that behavior for someone else who might have been struggling and they don't necessarily have right words for it. Like, what was that thing you did at stand-up today? All right, come in the office. I'll talk to you about it.
Yeah.
So I know for a long time, love was not a correct word to use in the workplace, especially at the corporate level. And if COVID showed us nothing else, that love is the only thing that matters, man. It's the thing that's going to continue to bring us to work. It's the thing that brings me here every Thursday, no matter what my physical condition is. And I don't mean to sound like a train wreck, but as soon as, like, I don't necessarily know what the HR departments, corporate HR departments need to do in order to make that shift. But if we can't pivot away from this very austere, very clinical way of running our businesses, there won't be any more business to run.
Yeah, this comes to that I talk about it a lot, creating safe and open environments, right? Because I think if you can do that as a leader, forget what HR say in corporate office, it's irrelevant. The culture's only as good as the worst manager. So be the best manager and think about what the culture in your place can be. And if it's safe and if it's open, you can have conversations that you wouldn't be able to have otherwise. It's and it's more like a family then, isn't it? And it's back to that kind of love and relationships that makes such a difference.
I mean, we were talking about the book Radical Candor on a couple of episodes, and reading that really just kind of shocked me, because I realized that this is actually the leadership handbook for the new hospitality culture, because it's about bringing your whole self to work and inviting everyone else to bring in their whole selves.
Yep. I think I heard something the other day, and someone reminded me of it, and I haven't heard the same for a long time, but leave your personal life at the door. I haven't heard it for so long, and you think about it now, and it's just like, we've got to be teaching people how to deal with those situations better, because sometimes you can have the greatest guy in the world, but if he's got a few things at home, if you can deal with that appropriately, he's not going to be a superstar. So you're only limiting yourself, really. But it just goes to show
there's always, I think, Adam, you and I have talked about this type of stuff.
Yep.
There's always going to be companies or leaders or managers who they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They say we like resilient people, and what they mean is somebody who just keeps their mouth shut and goes to work. And you know what, Adam? I mean, one of the reasons that I stay as connected to you as I do is because I know you care about people and you love the industry and you want to see people succeed. Mm-hmm. And you know what? At the end of the day, I mean, not to speak out of turn or for you, but anyone who listens to this or reads the show notes or anything, if they can't go to their company and talk about what's going on, they should call you, because that's what you do.
And, thank you for that, Jim. I accept that fully without trying to diminish it with false modesty, which is what I would usually do, right? But this other idea of, like, we as hospitality professionals have got to get over this thing about that we have internally or emotionally about them, the industry, the boss, whatever. We're the industry. We're the ones that create culture every single moment when we're in our work week. It's happening elbow to elbow. It's not a goddamn poster, and nobody gives a shit. Sorry, all our HR professionals, but really, come in, do your presentation. Sure, that poster goes on the compliance bulletin board. Get it. And yet, if I'm in conversation with a client of mine where he's like coming to the conclusion that there is a disconnect or an incongruence behind what the company says it wants to do and what's actually happening on the floor. And once you smell that, like you can't, or I should say, once you see that, you can't unsee it. No matter how much money is being thrown in your pocket, he's now considering what's important for him as far as goals and ways he wants to move forward in his career. And he's looking around himself and like, I don't know if I can do it here. And I'm not advocating any particular action. What I only want him to do is get clear on his goals, or not even his goals, but his values. Like, what is a value that you have that is non-negotiable? And how many times have we pissed that away for a job?
Well, and Adam, if I can put, if you'll allow me to put words in your mouth here.
Please go right ahead.
Values that are non-negotiable, I think probably, and Scott, maybe for you too, but I know for me as well, that's something that I learned working in hospitality.
Yes.
So there's my wrap-up comment for the day. Because, I mean, those things, I'm here where I am right now in what I do every day now because of that concept. So.
Definitely.
So Scott, you're going to have the last word, but I wanted to put my last word out there was the thing that I learned the last, one thing I just still couldn't get my head around was the fact that a healthy boundary communicated and maintained by me in a non-judgmental or sarcastic way or whatever, like just a simple conversation, is the most, it's the first step for me to be able to engage in my own self-care, because I actually valued myself enough to say, I know I haven't talked about this a lot, and I didn't really know this was a thing for me, but I get that, it's a thing for me. I don't want you to call me nicknames or whatever that conversation is, right? And you could actually say that in a much more softer way, as Kelly was coaching us to do last week. But this idea of, I never knew what the hell boundary was. And now, I would say over the last year, I'm starting to appreciate just how much it serves me and it serves others around me. So that's my last word. Scott, you got number 6. What's happening, baby?
Bring it home.
Bring it home. Okay, my my number 6 then, which I'll have to have a look because I scribbled it out on the tube. But this one would be empower and include. So I think, especially with the new generation coming through, they want to be part of it. They want to be part of the journey. They want to be part of the mission, the vision. And I think never, like we've seen before, does inclusion, and there's lots of people talking about things with that, but inclusion in terms of bringing the whole team together and allowing them to be part of the journey, which is empowerment. And I think that is the way to inspire. It's the way to develop. It's the way to bring people through the industry. And I think by doing that, because of the values that a lot of the younger generation hold, it will start forcing some of that older generation to make a change. And I think it's going to be really important. So I think that's one of the things that I've learned, especially over probably the last 2 or 3 years since I came back to the UK and was working with a different style of people than I was in Dubai and when I left the UK. And they want to have a voice. They want to know where they're going. They don't need to get there straight away. They don't need to earn the biggest salaries, but they want to know how. And that's just, about empowerment, inclusion. And I did a post the other day about meetings and putting people in meetings that have absolutely no point. Empower your people and let that safe and open environment allow them to say, this is not worthwhile my time. It's a defocus, it's a distraction. And by doing that, you'll make them feel more adult, you'll make them feel more involved, you'll give them, and they will then go and run your business better. So that was my number 6.
Thanks, Scott. Again, Jim, an amazing episode. I mean, I know we're running over time, but like, where are you going to stop in that? We could have just gone for the top 3, which we're doing next week. We're only talking about 3 episodes. Scott, thank you very much. I know it's a little bit later.
That's okay.
You're in the evening time in the UK, and I just really appreciate the fact that you've, negotiated with your family that this would be okay with them. So thank you for that, and for taking that and bringing them into this circle of consensus. So like nobody feels like they got ripped off. But if they want to connect with you, if there's anything in this amazing episode that people want to like trigger and they're like, no, I want to talk to that guy, how do they do that?
Yeah, sure. And before I say that, genuinely, this is one of the podcasts that I always listen to, not just because there's really good guests on it like me, but genuinely, I think, do you know what? I learned something from every podcast, and I emailed you this morning, Adam, about the one with Jensen Cummins.
Yeah.
And genuinely, I sat there listening to that, and I was just like, this is brilliant. So keep up the great work, and it is an honor to come on because I'm sitting in esteemed guests here, so thank you very much and keep it going because I know it's not easy doing these things as well.
You're part of the team, man. You are an integral part you are a valued member of the team. Have you ever seen the Penguins movie?
No,
yeah. Well, you have a small child, so you'll see it eventually. I totally get it. The Penguins of Madagascar. You got to check it out, man.
Yeah. So no, brilliant. Thank you. And then, check out my website, www.audenhospitality.com. And I chat on LinkedIn every day, 9 a.m. UK time. So, have a follow on there. And we talk about very similar stuff to this. So
thank you. We're going to have links. There's a bunch of links in the chat, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of combine them all into a post. And I'm wondering, Jim, Scott, if you'd be so kind as to speak for yourself, not putting words in your mouth, but once I get this posted, would you tag onto that and just talk about your 5 and why they matter to you?
Absolutely.
That way we can all be in the tent, not hanging outside. So I'm just going to put this last one in here, the Penguins of Madagascar. Yeah, it's completely silly, but sometimes you need silly. And Jim, to your... the point I was trying to make is that there are lower salary members or hourly members who may look at all the solutions or at least resources that are available and they go, yeah, no. I got 2 DMs in the same day, and this one person, again, was not necessarily as desperate as the other, but it's like, I really need some assistance. Okay, cool. When? Here's my link. Let's book the call. It's just a discovery. Like, we're going to be in discovery of what there is for you. Nothing, crickets. So I get, once you get up to that, because I did the same thing, like I get right up to the edge of that line, which means I can no longer be who I was, and now I have to be someone else if that's what I want in my life. And there are many times when I pulled back.
Yeah,
I'm not pulling back anymore. I'm not going to do it, and I'm not going to let anybody that I work with do that. So I hope you guys, brought your lunch, because it's going to take all day. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Scott. This has been another episode of Turning the Tables, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, y'all.